The Gothic genre is one that has taken many writers by storm, in the way it explores ethics through its representation of evil and monstrosity, creating its disturbing and liminal atmosphere through highlighting humanity's fear of the unknown. In particular, many Gothic texts explore themes of desire and temptation. You may be asking, do Gothic texts seek to liberate desire or do they seek to constrain them? Well, today I'm going to be exploring Bram Stoker's Dracula and Ana Lily Amirpour's A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night to explain how this genre seeks to constrain desires through its representation of evil, while also considering how the symbolism has changed throughout the centuries of Gothic writing. I will also be using Fred Bodding's Gothic introduction, Negative Aesthetics, to explain the representation of desire in Gothic texts. To begin, Dracula has often been seen as having themes of sexuality, and Stoker uses it in order to criticize how this desire was deemed as cynical and monstrous during 19th century England. Dracula adapts the classic Gothic trope of female victim heroine against the predatory man, who, the latter of whom, as Bodding describes, gives free rein to cruel, selfish desires and ambitions. In Dracula, desires of sexuality are heavily implied through scenes such as the three vampire women displaying sexual dominance above Jonathan Harker, as well as through Lucy's transformation into a vampire and her sensual and alluring personality that develops. By displaying these sexual traits only when characters are placed in situations where the suspension of normal rules leads to tension and ambivalence, in Bodding's words, Stoker implies that it's abnormal for ladies to convey such mentalities, as it goes against the norm of male dominance, where they're meant to pursue the women and take lead during moments such as sex. It's further clear how Stoker confirms to us the suspicion that he vilifies such desires, as he has the male characters seek to restore order through the disturbing execution of Lucy, the Bloofer lady, with the thrust of a stake through the heart that is almost phallic and potentially alluding to gang rape. Especially given how all the men had feelings for her. I mean, even Van Helsing started saying he loved her at that point, so if that wasn't symbolism, I don't know what is. Lastly, in relation to Dracula, Stoker shows his distaste for outward desires plainly in a way that many seem to ignore. Towards the end of the text, when the heroes are working to race Dracula back to his castle, Mina and Van Helsing note that he does whatever he can in order to get what he wants. Here, Van Helsing explicitly says that Dracula has a child brain and is pretty much a man-child. This confirms the ideas that having and pursuing strong desires are being criticized throughout Stoker's text, but that's not all we're exploring today. Amirpour's film A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night also explores themes of desire, but in a slightly different way from Dracula. Instead of having the vampires, the monsters, convey the evil of desire, Amirpour uses the human characters to explore the lack of self-constraint among men in a patriarchal society. Funny how it was women's sexuality we were hating before. The vampire in the film, who we'll call the girl, is seen as more of a vigilante than a villain, in contrast to how Bodding describes Gothic women, where telling her not to do something is often enough to make her do it, due to the prohibition being an enticement of curiosity and desire. The women in this film are not the ones lacking self-restraint, not even the girl, though she's the vampire. Instead, it's the human men such as Saeed and Hossein who are the predators that prey on those they deem lesser than them, openly forcing their desires such as drugs and sex onto the other characters, despite the obvious issues with doing so. Now, this is where we see the criticism of desire. The only characters who we know that the girl kills are Saeed and Hossein, only after they force Ati, the prostitute, into doing things she doesn't want. Unlike Dracula, however, the film doesn't vilify every ounce of desire that humans are bound to have, and embraces ideas such as longing for connection, belonging, and new beginnings, which we see through the girl and her connection with Arash, as well as Ati wanting to leave Bad City. A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night simply conveys desire in the way that immature desires upset social mores, as stated by Bodding, which is much more forgiving, and not all desires are unreasonable or wrong to have. This contrasts the idea of devilish influences and mystery being the cause to encourage desire as well as trepidation, as Bodding states and Dracula suggests, as in Amirpour's film, humans are the real tormentor. So as this film and Stoker's criticizes characters indulging immoral desires and appetites, as Bodding says, it is evident that the Gothic genre does seem to wish to constrain desire, highlighting the harm that it does to us and those around us, whether realistic and reasonable or not. Even if nowadays criticism in Gothic literature is done a little differently when compared to older texts like Dracula, where the monster is, well, the monster.
Cheap